So officially welcome everyone. Nice to see you again, Sally and Sue and Susie. What a nice turnout today. So we've done our little check-in. Really, to summarize it, I'll give a 1-minute summary of that. It's really about maintaining awareness no matter what happens in the dream. So you stay in that calm, imperturbable state of mind no matter what happens. That's really the always the key. And our only practice is to do that. So let's share my screen with you. So we'll go. Anything else to share, anyone, or shall we just go into having a look at today's quote and a bit of teaching on that, and then we'll have a look at the lesson, which kind of leads off from that. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen. Look this up. Right. Enlarge it a bit. Okay, there we go. So how's everyone on time today? Can we go till 3? Or?
I'm here until 2:30.
2:30. Okay.
Yeah, but I could do 2:30. I've got to shoot today.
Okay. Sue?
Yeah, I'm here. That's fine.
Okay. Might be able to continue a bit longer. So if you want to read the quote, anyone? Quite a long one.
I'll read it. Okay. We put no stumbling block in anyone's path so that our ministry will not be discredited. Rather, as servants of perfect love, we commend ourselves in every way, in great endurance, in troubles, hardships and distresses, in beatings, imprisonments and riots, in hard work, sleepless nights and hunger, in purity, understanding, patience and kindness, in the remembrance of perfect love and in the sincere love, in truthful speech and in power of perfect love, with weapons of righteousness in the right hand and in the left, through glory and dishonor, bad report and good report, genuine yet regarded as impostors, known yet regarded as unknown, dying and yet we live on, beaten and yet not killed, sorrowful yet always rejoicing, poor yet making many rich, having nothing and yet possessing everything.
It's a quote from Corinthians, the Apostle Paul, which just adapted, changed God and the Holy Spirit to perfect love and remembrance of perfect love, which probably a precursor to a massive project, translating the whole Bible into an alternative language. That sort of came to me the other day. I was like, let's just do the course first, get that done. But I think it would definitely benefit from it, because you read that passage and you've got perfect love in there. It changes it compared to the original, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it's just really saying that not to let anything get in your way, really.
Well, let's reflect on it. So if you want to read the first paragraph.
Today's inspirational quote from the New Testament is both inspiring and also preparing you for the trials that may come to tempt and test you on the hero's journey of serving only God or love in a world of illusion made to deny the truth. Paul is saying Don't expect it to be easy to serve only God or love in the face of ego's seemingly stiff opposition, but that it's worth it, because though you may face these trials, you'll be able to remain equanimous in the face of all of them. Experience joy instead of sorrow. Possess everything that's truly valuable, i.e. love, and everything that comes from it. Though you may own nothing materially, and ultimately have eternal life instead of the suffering and death that characterizes this world. Though you may own nothing materially, and ultimately have eternal life instead of the suffering and death that characterizes this
Okay,
world.
that got
That feels
repeated.
like I repeated that.
It was obviously meant to be repeated. Sorry, that's an error, but yeah, that all happens for a reason, I guess. So, yeah. Any thoughts on that?
The ego, it can be difficult. That can be difficult experiencing the ego, but you know, it's worth going through.
I think it's like you pointed out at the beginning, that it's all about awareness, having that awareness and sticking with it no matter what.
Yeah, and he's saying that this is a call to persevere and really dig deep, and do what's required, and this was his experience. He had a lot of the early apostles, troubles, hardships, distresses, beatings, imprisonments, right? He went through all of that in the name of this new faith. And so he was encouraging people to remain true no matter what. That nothing's really changed. Perhaps the world is slightly easier. We don't necessarily get beaten up for our faith, but there's still all this. 2,000 years later, we still have beatings, imprisonments, riots, hard work, sleepless nights, hunger. Nothing really changes. It's the human experience. And he's saying through it all, remain rooted in this presence of perfect love, and let it guide you. And though you have nothing on the level of form, you're rich in truth, because you have this deep peace, connection with your source. Having nothing yet making many rich, having nothing yet possessing everything. So just a wonderful reminder of what it really means to be truly guided by the Spirit. Again, to expect difficulty, but know that you can overcome it with the guidance of the Spirit. Okay, and Susie, if you want to have a little read of the next one, and lesson. This isn't actually today's lesson, so it's another lesson, but I thought it was relevant, so I included it. I think you're muted.
It's also a call to join the likes of Yeshua, Siddhartha, aka the Buddha, Socrates and Socrates and
Laozi. Socrates and Laozi. Yeah.
All of whom are depicted. Is it depicted?
Depicted, yeah.
In the picture below as a minister or teacher of God or perfect love, which is your only real purpose and function in this world.
So it's a call they were nothing special. They were just men who were inspired by the Spirit. And they listened. They listened to that call. They listened only to that call. And, their exploits are recorded in history. And we go, oh, they were spiritual masters. They were just people just like us. They had stuff going on. They had challenges, difficulties, hurdles, obstacles, but they just persevered in that. Yeshua, Yeshua and Socrates both died because of their beliefs. Okay, thanks. So they both died because of their beliefs. Yeshua was crucified, as we know, and Socrates was forced to take poison. Well, they said you've either got to leave Athens, be excommunicated, or take poison, and he didn't. He chose to take poison, hemlock, and he died because the authorities didn't like his teaching. They felt he was stirring trouble up for them. So, but they had their difficulties, but they remained steadfast in their belief in something else. And so we are the same, exactly the same. There's nothing, no different. They were just people who were inspired by the Spirit, and they listened to that, and their lives, were then a testament to the Spirit, and we draw inspiration from them. Still to this day, 2,500 years later, we still talk about these people, and it's extraordinary. So that's a true legacy, because they stood for love. They were teachers of perfect love, which is lesson 154. I'm among the original was actually ministers of God. I'm among the ministers of God, among the teachers of perfect love is my adaptation of that. Okay, so Susie, you want to continue?
Your ego or belief in separation will tell you that thinking you are among these spiritual giants is arrogant in the extreme. Who are you to claim that you are on the same level as these masters? It may ask you, and then it will tell you that you'll never get to that level. So best you get back in your box and stop these illusions of grandeur, trying hard not to reveal its own arrogance in this belief.
Does that kind of resonate, Susie?
Yes, it does. It really does. Because there was a song that was, oh gosh, what was it? You're never going to get it. You're never going to get it. That kept happening this morning in my head. So that's really speaking to me. Yeah.
That's what the ego will do. Who are you? Just little Susie or little whoever, and don't forget it. And you're nothing like these. These were great masters. They were avatars. They were born special. You have a whole story about, Yeshua was born as the Son of God. I mean, look at what they did with him. They pedestalized him, to use Alan Watts's term. They put him on a pedestal, and they said, he's the unattainable Christ. He's the Son of God, and he's just so far beyond us. But so we can worship him. But that's not what he wanted. None of them wanted that. So don't worship me. Become like me. Just follow my way. I'm just a way shower. Follow my example. And give worth only to God. So you worship only God, not praying down saying, oh, you're so holy and amazing, and because God has no ego to accept such praise. It's meaningless. But in your thoughts and your words and your actions, the way you live your life is a testament to the Spirit, and that's the worship that God wants. You allow yourself to be inspired by it and to live your life guided by this presence. And your life becomes a demonstration of it, and you inspire other people to follow because it's an inspiring example, and they think that's a better way to live. So don't listen to the lies of the ego, because every one of these masters say that you have access to the same power to work miracles through love as they did, exactly the same. Yeshua, is on record saying, well, I am you and you are me. I am the Father and the Father is me. I am in the Father is in me. I am in you and you are in me. He said all this, and yet people didn't really understand it. As Eckhart Tolle once, he's got a sense of humor. He says, well, maybe who understands this? Maybe a few Buddhists. Everyone laughs. most traditional Christians go, oh, and I'm not equal to Jesus. No, it's no way. And he was the only Son of God. He was special. But we are, he said so. And there's actually direct quotes. He said, yeah, very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I've been doing, and they will do even greater things than this. He said that, direct quote from the Bible. So how we can then still interpret his words to say, well, I'm the only special one, and you can't possibly, match what I've done. That's not what he said. So as recorded, yeah, you will do even greater things than these. He was saying you have the same power, and even greater things than these are possible for you. So statement of humility. He wasn't saying I'm the great I am. I'm it. He's saying everyone is it. I'm just an example of someone who's been inspired by this presence. Okay, so then next little bit, Sally, if you want to read the next paragraph.
Never, never believe the ego when it tells you you're unworthy of greatness, which is not greatness in the ego's interpretation of the world, i.e. what Yeshua calls grandiosity in A Course in Miracles, designed to puff up the ego's self-importance and compensate for its underlying feeling of unworthiness.
Okay, so pause it there. Do you understand what grandiosity means?
Yeah, there used to be a couple of people in my husband's side of the family who were very, they knew everything. They always had to say everything. They had to finish every conversation. We've all met people like that. But I didn't realize actually at the time they felt unworthy. I felt unworthy listening to them because I felt like they knew everything. And obviously they didn't. And now I understand it's their underlying feeling of inadequacy.
Yeah, you only need to be grandiose if underneath that you feel inadequate. And you can always tell because it's so obvious. Someone's just it's the great I am, and it's I had a grandfather like this, and I remember he would sit there and literally puff himself up, like stick his chest out, and right. And now he's the expert on the subject because he's got a newspaper article, and he's busy citing as though he's the world's greatest expert, and all he's done is got a newspaper article. But that was because underlying that, he didn't feel very secure. He wasn't a terribly bright man, and he never done anything particularly achieved much in his life, probably by his own standards anyway. And so it was all an attempt to counteract that. And when someone like that comes along, people just roll their eyes like, oh, not this again, because it's really, obviously not. It doesn't build close, warm relationships. It doesn't. Oh, not this person again. You've got to tolerate it. But if you understand where it's coming from, then you can forgive it, and maybe have some compassion to understand where they're coming from. And that's just the only way they know how to deal with their inadequacy. Instead of looking at it, they just cover it over with grandiosity.
It's a coping mechanism, isn't it? We can't judge anyone because we're all using our own coping mechanism.
And we've all done it. We've all done we've all done all of it at some point. Just maybe not to the extent they have, but we've all tried the grandiosity trick of the ego. And temporarily, it makes you feel a bit better about yourself, but it doesn't last because it's false. It's based on a false separate self. So you'll notice grandiose people, if they're in that grandiosity. I mean, take a classic example, and you got to love it. Donald Trump, just like classic.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I mean, but what a great example. I mean, the grandiose ego, the arrogance, and then what happens when that gets challenged is anger. So he drops down very quickly into anger. Or now I don't get my way and I don't win the presidency. I don't just go gracefully. I'm a really bad loser because my grandiosity demands that I must be the greatest. I must be the president. And now that's that bubble's been pricked, and he's a very sore loser. Because it's all about the appearance. You know, his whole identity is about, you know, this great show that he's put on. And you know what so then actually it's very weak, because he's actually very affected by what people think of him. That matters to him. Whereas the true spiritual masters really doesn't matter. They're independent of that. And the idea of running for president would just be like, well, why do I want to do that? What's the point of doing that? It's just a great ego grandiosity show, isn't it? Marianne Williamson tried it, and I suspect some of her motives were good. So I think she probably wanted to try and do some good in that position. But I think she's probably very lucky she didn't get there, because she would have found her spiritual principles being severely tested, if not overwhelmed, by the demands of such an egoic position. I mean, only the ego would invent a position where one person has all that power. What a ridiculous idea. One person can now make all these decisions and, you know, decide for everyone and decide whether we're going to war or not. And it's just crazy. So, you know, it's an egoic construct. And then how do you maintain, you know, the spiritual truth within that? I think with great difficulty. So most of the great spiritual masters and teachers have not gone that route. They've avoided any kind of worldly power. Yeshua being a prime example. He was offered, they also, you know, you're the king of the Jews, you're going to be our king. We want to make you king. We want you to take on the Romans and free us, because, you know, people were thinking about this on the level of form. And they thought he was going to come and be a great warrior. And you know, he had to correct that and avoid any temptation to do that, which he did quite successfully, fortunately, which is why his teaching is lost. But if you just become another warrior king, well, we wouldn't have heard of him. He would have been, oh, well, there's this guy called Jesus, and he had to go at trying to overthrow the Romans, and they brutally put it down, and he died. And he got crucified, and he died. And there was no spiritual dimension to it. He was just trying to change things on the level of form. It's a guy called Barabbas, actually. Do you know the story of Jesus? There's a guy called Barabbas who was lived at the same time, and he was this great. He was a revolutionary. He was like, right, I'm gonna, you know, overthrow the Romans, and you know, he ended up dying, like Yeshua on the cross. But there was no spiritual dimension to his life. He was just trying to fix things on the level of form. Whereas Yeshua's message was so transcendent. It was like the Romans can do whatever. The Romans can have their worldly power, and they can be the conquerors of Judea. He didn't care, because the kingdom of heaven is you know, transcends that, and that's what he stood for. So they all avoided the temptation to get sucked in to the sort of lower levels of trying to find some kind of satisfaction and power in the ego. And they said, you know, the only power is God's, and they lived that way. So very humble lives, often avoided the temptation to go into, to get sucked into egoic games of power and control and so on. Okay, so next paragraph.
You skipped one. Doesn't matter though, does it?
Right. Greatness. Yeah, sorry, did we skip that? Greatness refers to feeling and extending the love of God, or in our alternative art of letting go language, pure formless awareness of perfect love and the peace and joy that everyone will inevitably experience as a result of its beneficent presence to other people through all your words and actions while you are seemingly human. You do use unusual words. beneficent.
Sometimes when I read the newsletter, you know, the email, I think, oh God, don't ask me to say that word. What was it today?
Beneficent.
There was another one. What's his name? Sudathu or something?
Siddhartha.
That's it.
Siddhartha.
And I was like,
his name.
how do you say that, Siddhartha? I mean, I read these words, but I've never had an experience of saying them out loud. So
really?
I don't know how to say them.
Well, yeah, it's unusual, but I guess, you know, I've studied these masters for so long. It's like, oh, that's Siddhartha. That's, you know, because you learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get it. Beneficent and Siddhartha. There you go.
Okay, got it.
Quite easy. And it keeps you on your toes, I guess. Just throw
Like
one or
in
two words
English
in there,
class
like,
at
oh,
school.
okay. Bene, it comes from, blessing. Bene, beneficent, it blesses you. It's beneficent presence. And so your life is a blessing to other people. That's what the masters, that's the way they try and live. Not to everyone. Everyone's not going to perceive it that way, unfortunately. I mean, not everyone perceived Yeshua as a blessing. Some thought he was the devil incarnate, and he was evil, and he was trying to overthrow the existing order, change people's minds. So you always get people, anyone who's genuinely standing for the spirit, you always get resistance. Not everyone's gonna love them, but they continue. And the test of time is, these are the people that we still think about, we still write about, we talk about, we're inspired by. The politicians and the kings and the powers that be of their day and age. No one remembers those. No one goes and studies the words of, well, who was the, Herod the Great. He's kind of an after figure in Jesus's life. He had the power and the control. The Romans, Pontius Pilate, and the emperor. No one remembers these people because they didn't stand for anything that was eternal. But we do remember the people who, stood for the truth. So, if you want to leave a legacy, that's what you need to stand for. Dedicate yourself to the truth. Okay, next one. This was the task 2, or Susie, do you want to read that?
Okay, now this was the task all the great spiritual teachers like Yeshua, Buddha, Socrates, and Laozi dedicated themselves to, that made them great. And there's nothing stopping you dedicating yourself to this same task and claiming your rightful place amongst the ministers of God, or phrased another way, the teachers of love. Today and every day, accept your own resistance to the truth of perfect or unconditional love without opposition.
Not opposite. So there's nothing stopping them. They had the same difficulties. They would have encountered the ego. They would have had to go on the hero's journey. They would have had to undo it, and it's not easy for anyone. History sort of glosses over that bit, and we tend to pedestalize them. So, well, they were just born that way. The Buddha was born the Buddha, and Yeshua was born the Christ, and that's just how they were. They were lucky. But you look at their stories, and there was a lot of learning, a lot of growth, a lot of persistence in the face of difficulties. The Buddha he had a very cushy life. He was a prince. Everything was provided. He didn't have to work, didn't have to lift a finger. He had servants. He had a wife and son. He was going to succeed as his father, and his life would have just been, a life of luxury. But he couldn't accept it. He went out one night and he saw all the suffering. He saw sickness and he saw death for the first time, suffering, and he realized that, well, I'm living in a fool's paradise. I'm living in this palace, sort of separated from all this, but all of this is going on, and I want to understand why. And so then he left the comfort of his home, went on the hero's journey, and nearly killed himself trying to get this. He did all kinds of ascetic practices, including starving himself virtually to death, until eventually he realized that's not the way. It's not by the ascetic practices you're going to get there. It's by letting go and just surrendering to what you already are. He realized that, but it took him 7 years of very a lot of work to get there. So we all have to go on our hero's journey, whatever that is, and do the work, and then the realization comes. That's what we can learn from these great teachers. So that brings us to our lesson for today. Cheers. The word of God has given me to speak. Alternatively, I translated it as I speak the message of perfect love. So let's have a look at today's. lesson 276. Yeah. I actually changed it. I was changing the newsletter. Decided to change it to express the message of perfect love. This is actually more about more than just your words. Yeah, the words are one way, but our actions. I express the message of perfect love in my words and my actions. Is the calling. Okay, so if you want to read, we've got the how much time do we have? Hoppus 1. So Sally, you said you've got to go at Hoppus 2. Okay, so we've got a bit of time. Let's do the what is the Christ? 5 paragraphs, then we'll go into the lesson. So what is the Christ? This is the insert that he's asked us to read every day before the lesson, just as a preparation. So who'd like to read number 1?
Your true self is perfect love's extension as it extends itself. It is the self we share, uniting us with one another and with pure formless awareness of perfect love as well. It is the thought which still abides within the mind that is its source. It has not left its wholly aware home, nor lost the innocence in which it extends. It abides unchanged forever in the mind of perfect love.
Okay, any thoughts or feelings on that today?
No.
Okay, can you explain it in your own words? What's he saying there?
It's actually remembering who you are, isn't it? Because it's always there. It's reminding you to remember that the awareness is always there of perfect love. It is your home.
And it's your true self. So again, he's giving us a self. He's not saying there's no self, like the Buddha said. He's saying this true self is the extension of God or perfect love. And by identifying with the self, this is going to unite us with one another and with pure formless awareness of perfect love as well. So it unites us with our brothers and our source. So it's a concept, it's a thought. It's not just pure awareness yet, but it's this thought that unites you with this awareness, this source. So I did show this yesterday, but I'm going to show it again. So the Holy Trinity. What he's showing us here is it's an operating system. So we have at the very top, God the Father, heaven, love, perfect oneness, eternity, pure formless awareness, perfect love, source, knowledge, many names for it, the ground of being, Brahman in the Hindu tradition. It's the infinite, eternal absolute. It's that which does not change, the very source of all being. But that's so abstract for us. And what Yeshua is giving us is this concept of a true self. And he's saying you can have this one self, recognizing that you're only one self, as and identifying yourself with that and that alone is what's going to be the bridge between these worlds. Because this is so abstract. It's just a state of pure formless awareness of perfect love. So there's no self-concept there. There's the Buddha had the doctrine of no self, anatta, which is simply pointing directly into the state of pure formless awareness, which he called nirvana. But for most people, that's quite terrifying, because coming from the egoic perspective of being quite identified with the separate self, to think that you have no self feels like complete non-existence. So Yeshua has given us this intermediary step, and he said, well, this idea of Christ or your true self or the Son of God or extension of perfect love, or you could call it the Buddha as well, you could call it the Atman, that's the Hindu teaching. And there's probably other names for it as well, but you get the idea. This higher self is going to connect you with your source. It's going to bring more and more of this experience of pure formless awareness of perfect love into your mind. And it's going to do that by allowing you to reinterpret your experience in this world of a physical universe of time and space. All the people, things, places, events, circumstances, situations, traumas, successes, failures, and all experiences that seem to exist and happen in the physical universe of time and space. So it's everything. It's your entire perception is changed by this self, because from this self, you perceive differently. You have true perceptions. That's what he calls Christ's vision, or true perceptions. They're also called miracles. We can call it whole awareness. It's called forgiveness. We call it letting go, surrender, salvation, at-one-ment, enlightenment, all the same. It's one process that talks about how this self can reinterpret all your experiences in this world. And as you do that, more and more awareness arises in your mind of this pure formless awareness. So you're taking yourself back into the experience of the source. So hence there's a communication between the Father, or the source, and the Son, and it's an extension, identifying with the one self. So it's an operating system for your mind that's designed for the illusion to help you to get back to the truth, to transcend the illusion. But while you're in the illusion, the operating system is pretty helpful, because just being rooted in this is revelation, and you can't function in the world if you're rooted in pure formless awareness, and there's no other awareness. That's called a revelation, which is beyond a miracle. That's why he calls it A Course in Miracles, not A Course in Revelation, because it's directed at this level of, okay, he's gonna teach us that this is our true self, and he's gonna teach us how to perceive the world correctly from this true self. That's the curriculum that we're learning, and that's the scope of it. It's here that the work needs to be done. This will happen of itself as you do this and you correct your mind. More and more of this communication will arise, and you will find more of these deeper experiences coming. So Sally, your experience, that mystic experience, you said, that only came because of many months of this work. I think you'll see that. It's because you've been plugging away and doing the work on this level and correcting your perception, and then boom, suddenly this lovely peaceful awareness arises, and you just go into that for hours, and there's really no intention to do anything. But that hasn't lasted. You're still having to operate in the world, aren't you? And still deal with perception, and so this is what's useful at the moment. It's just to train our minds to do this. So that's why he's given us a course that helps us to do exactly that. And this connection will happen of its own accord if you do this. If you identify with the Christ, the true self, and you change your perception systematically and progressively by referencing always to the Spirit. You see how it's in one line. By referencing here to the Spirit, you're going, I remember this state that is not affected by any of these illusions. And now that changes my perception of this particular situation. And so that's how you translate the infinite, absolute, eternal into a thought system that can actually serve you in this world. It's actually quite practical. You see that? So it's the translation. This is almost like the transformer, in the electrical engineering and so on. They have these transformers that will step down a higher voltage, and they'll step it down into a lower voltage so that it can be used on this level. So it's the same thing. This is like high frequency energy that will doesn't really perceive at all. It just is pure formless awareness, and there needs to be a transformer, which is the true self or the Christ, through which it goes, and then that changes your perceptions.
So I understand Father, I understand Son. Where's the Holy Ghost in there?
The Holy Spirit is the arrows. Holy Spirit,
Okay, just check.
remembrance of oneness of perfect love.
All right.
That connects these boxes.
Mm.
So it's the faculty of perception, changing your perception. That then becomes the bridge. So from the Christ, you can now perceive, which is Christ's vision. That faculty of perception from the perspective of Christ is the Holy Spirit.
So the Holy Spirit is like the little downloads we get when we get those aha moments, those moments of clarity.
Yeah. And it's when you reinterpret and you change your mind, you go, actually, I was quite angry, but now I've let it go and I'm actually feeling quite peaceful. The power that's behind that he calls the Holy Spirit, which in the end is just part of this awareness. It's coming from God. But it's how we interpret that power, the ultimate infinite power, absolute power of pure formless awareness of perfect love. How do we interpret that in this world? The interpretation of that is the rest of the Trinity. Christ is the self-concept that can now, from that place of I am one self and everyone's one self, I can now reinterpret my world and I can see it differently. And when I do that reinterpretation and I perceive differently, that's the Holy Spirit in action. So can you see it's an operating system for your life? It's actually quite very useful. It's a pity most people don't understand it. So it hasn't been properly understood by Christian theologians and priests, and so they can't really explain it, because you have to understand the psychology of it, don't you? You have to understand these levels of the mind, and you have to have had a good teacher like Yeshua who's taught you this is how the mind really works. So then the Holy Spirit makes sense within that understanding as a way of an operating system that will lead you out of the dream. Okay, so number one, any questions, comments on number one? He's diagrammatic form, he's referring to Christ being on this level, and then it has not left its holy home. It still abides unchanged forever in the mind of God, in the mind of perfect love. In other words, it's still a part of this mind, right? So it's connected, but it can also help you to perceive what's going on in this world. So it's the bridge between the two worlds. So as he says then, number two, Christ is the link. Sue, do you want to read the next one?
Your true self is the link that keeps you one with pure formless awareness of perfect love. It guarantees that separation is no more than an illusion of despair, for hope will abide in it forever. Your mind is part of its, and it's of yours. It is the part in which perfect love's answer lies, where all decisions are already made and dreams are over. It remains untouched by anything your body's eyes perceive, although its source placed in it the means for your awakening, yet it remains the self who, like its source, knows no sin.
Okay. Anything strike you there?
So I'm just checking. So the it was referring to your true self all the way through. Is that right?
Yeah. So your true self is the link, keeps you one with pure formless awareness. For hope will abide in it forever. So hope will abide in this true self. Your mind is part of its, and it's of yours. So your mind is part of its mind. Part of
It's
his.
mind, as in your true self's mind. What?
Yeah, well, it's you could also take the its as being pure formless awareness of perfect love.
Okay, your mind is part of it.
It's
it's
originally
part of yours.
his. It's originally his, so it's actually referring to the Christ is the link, but his could refer to Christ as well with a capital.
Right. Okay.
God guarantees separation. Your mind is part of his and his of yours. So it's actually unclear. He could be referring to Christ there, or he could be referring to God. I suspect he's referring to Christ, but in the end, it's all the same, so it doesn't matter. One awareness, really. There's no separation. Guarantees that separation is no more than an illusion of despair. for hope will abide in it forever. So this is going to be true forever. It doesn't matter whether you doubt it and you despair. None of that matters, because it's the truth, and it will be the truth forever. You can never really lose the truth. You can just deny it. So it goes underground, and then it resurfaces. And we look throughout human history. There have been some pretty dark times, but the spiritual truth always reveals itself at some point in the end, doesn't it? We've never gone through a period where, well, that's it. The truth just disappears, and there's no light. Even in the Dark Ages, there were mystics and there were saints who taught the truth through it, and often got persecuted for it. So because it's eternal, it will always arise. You can have these periods of darkness or unconsciousness that come in human history, but they never last, because that is not true. Ego isn't true, so it can't last. Okay, so any other thoughts on number 2? What is he saying there in summary? About decisions already made.
Is it that it's already happened?
Dreams are over. So from an eternal perspective, nothing ever happened. It never did happen. That's the point.
Mm.
The dream is over. It never happened. It's just a dream. All decisions are already made. Dreams are over, because you rest in the pure formless awareness of perfect love, as you always did. Before time was, you were in that state. After time is over, you'll be in the same state. And right now, you can realize that state, that transcendent state, is all that's real and all that's true. Make sense? That source placed in it the means for your awakening, yet does it remain the self who, like its source, knows no sin. So it's a means for your awakening, but it doesn't know about this idea of sin. It doesn't know that you did anything wrong, that you separated from your source, that you therefore guilty, you deserve to be punished. It doesn't know about any of that story. It's not a story that the Christ or the true self will entertain. Which is why it's innocent and it's pure.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it remains untouched. Okay, yes.
Remains untouched. So no matter what, he's saying to us, stay rooted in this. I am one self. None of this has really happened. None of the projections that I see are really real. Guilt and sin and fear and attack and whatever else that goes on here is real. I remain rooted in myself, and that keeps me in touch, connected to this awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you see how helpful this is. I mean, Yeshua's, he's given us a very helpful operating system. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Pure formless awareness of perfect love in our language, true self, and remembrance of perfect love. So all working in tandem to ultimately deliver you to the highest experience. The Holy of Holies, the highest experience, is just to merge your mind into this awareness. Realize there's nothing else. That's where we came from. That's where you're going back to.
Yeah, nice. You can just hold that place, hold that place of peace within you. Yeah.
So it becomes quite practical and doable. That's what I like about it. The problem with just saying no self, there's no self, and you're just nirvana. You're in the state of formless awareness. Is nirvana. Is how does that then translate into your worldly experience? How do you operate then in this world? And that question isn't that obvious in the Buddhist teaching. There were attempts to explain it, but with the doctrine of no self, then how do you then have some kind of foundation for perception in this world with no self to perceive it? you see what I mean? It's a challenge.
It's good to know that it's there, isn't it? It's good to know that it's there. And you just hold that peace and feel like that's just there for you.
And this self-concept is always there. You can always return to it and say, I'm not a separate self. I'm one self. I'm not a body. I'm this one self. And I share that self with all my companions. So it unites you with them. There's a sense of oneness, and it unites you with your source. Because that self comes from oneness. There could not be a concept of oneself without pure formless awareness of perfect love that underpinned that. See that?
Oh, that helps, because I've had I've had kind of an issue of the perception of oneness, but that really helps. Yeah, it feels like that perfect, pure formless awareness of perfect love is holding space for everyone. That's the oneness that we all just step into. We all step into, and that's where we're from. And that feels like, yeah, that I can understand the oneness a bit more clearly. Yeah.
It's the only self-concept that you can have that's not going to contradict this. Pure formless awareness of perfect love. Do you see that? Any other self-concept, I'm somehow separate, I'm unique, I'm special, I'm different, contradicts pure formless awareness of perfect love. So now you have the ego coming in. But the idea of I'm one self, and that self is everywhere. Everything shares that self-concept, unites you with this. So it's a way of learning this thought system and being able to translate it into perception in a very practical way, and restoring your mind systematically and progressively to this awareness, where ultimately, when you've really learned this, you don't need the idea of Christ. You don't need the Holy Spirit anymore, because these levels are not necessary anymore. You've merged your mind in with this so fully and completely that you're at this level, and that's all that's all there is. But while you're getting there, to raise you up to that awareness, these concepts are very helpful. So it's an operating system for your mind. It's designed to take you back home, which is really what he's explaining here in this short teaching, this insert on what is the Christ. Okay, so number 3, whose turn is it? Susie? Susie's turn.
Home of the remembrance of perfect love, and at home in pure formless awareness of perfect love alone, your true self remains at peace within the pure formless awareness of your wholly aware mind. This is the only part of you that has the reality and truth. The rest is dreams. Yet will these dreams be given to your true self to fade before its magnificence and reveal your true self to you at last?
Any thoughts on that?
They're really comforting to read, aren't they? Because when you look into it, and no matter how many times you read them, you're like hitting it at different, it's getting in deeper, I guess.
It feels to me like it's saying that your dreams are insignificant. Yeah.
Here, now, awareness.
And I had my experience in the oneness. You can't imagine what it's like until you're in it, really. But when you actually are in it, it really is absolutely no thought, perfect. You don't need anything. You're not lacking anything. You're not a person. And it's just like when you're on the outside looking in, it's so difficult to imagine. And, you have a little experience of it, and you go, oh, that's what it's like, and then you're out of it again, and you go, yeah, it's still, I suppose I'm saying it's difficult to get into the oneness sometimes, isn't it?
Well, he says, you're not going to be able to stay there. You're not going to maintain a state of revelation in this world for very long. Some of the advanced meditators, yogis, mystics, they've trained their minds to spend long periods of time in the state, but they're not active in the world. You can't be in pure formless awareness of perfect love and still be in the domain of perception and be walking around and talking and speaking. So they go within and they go into samadhi and they just stay in meditation for long periods, which means they're not typically very engaged in the world. They're what's called frequency holders. You just sit there and they hold this higher frequency of peace. So Yeshua's training us. He's saying, well, these experiences might come, revelation might come, and that's all good. And if it happens, it happens, and that's great. But by and large, most of your experience here is going to be on this level, on the perceptual level. So I'm going to give you a course to train you for that, because that's going to be the vast majority of your experience. So how do you reinterpret your perceptions?
Oh, so I imagine that the ones that perfected it were kind of in the oneness and still operating in the world.
Often they don't. They just, at that level, they just remove themselves from the world. Because you can't function in the world and still be in pure formless awareness.
No.
Because you've got perception going on, you've got senses, and you've got to be responding to what's happening. Otherwise you're likely to, if you didn't see with your physical senses, and you're likely to hurt yourself. You fall off fall down the steps, or imagine trying to drive in pure formless awareness. It's not going to work. It's all just pure formless awareness, and I'm driving and it's like crash smash. So usually what happens is when they get to that level, they just stay in the inner state, in samadhi it's called, and they might stay there for hours, days, weeks. Ramana would stay there for weeks. He'd go into a deep samadhi, and that's it. 2 weeks, you're not going to see him again. He's checked in. He's checked out of this world, and he's checked in to this state of samadhi, heaven. And he's not coming out of there for a long time. And for him, it wouldn't feel like 2 weeks. He's beyond time. So that's the highest state, but very few people attain that. And in a Western context, that's not that easy to live a life like that. Try doing nothing for 2 weeks. Just check out of your life and see what happens. There's all kinds of stuff we've got to do. So he's given us this teaching to help us where we are. He understands the world. We've created this very busy, chaotic world where there's lots to do. We've got our separate cells have invented all of this. So that's what we have to deal with. So he's given us a course to meet us where we are, which is pretty helpful. Hence, a course in miracles, because miracles are the translation of your perceptions, rather than a course in revelation or a course in love. And he even says at the beginning, in the introduction, you can't teach the meaning of love. That's beyond what can be taught. So he says, I can't really teach you this, but I can teach you to let go of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is what's happening here. And the blocks to the awareness of love's presence keep the false self in place, and that false self then blocks you from the awareness of your source. So the ego's got an alternative story going on in parallel to this, with no source, just a false self, which is supposedly source unto itself, and then interpreting all the situations, people, places, things, and events from this false self. And that's the alternative. It runs in parallel to this. And so you can see why we have an alternate reality model, because it's an alternate self. It's an alternate model of the self, alternate self-concept, alternate perception, creates an alternate reality, all made up by the mind, but with no source. The ego has no source. So it misses this, which means that it's disconnected and it doesn't have any true source, and therefore it's not real. Does the diagram kind of help you to understand this? I don't think it does anyway. And you're understanding what the Holy Trinity is, finally.
Yeah, it's forever shifting in my mind, but yeah. So ego has no source. So where did ego begin? Where did it come from?
Ah, but that's
It's illusion, I know, but
that's the illusion, right? It's a dream. Remember the clarification of terms. We've looked at this, and we'll look at it again very quickly, because there is no answer to that question on the level of form. So let's go into here, and we'll go into clarification of terms. Introduction, paragraph 4. You can read that, Sally. There's your answer.
the ego will demand many answers that this course does not give. It does not recognize as questions the mere form of a question to which an answer is impossible. The ego may ask, how did the impossible occur? To what did the impossible happen? And may ask this in many forms, yet there's no answer, only an experience. Seek only this and do not let theology delay you. Yeah, I realized it was an ego question. Just trying to get me to
logically, the ego says, well, if there's no source, then how did this all happen? And the answer is it didn't happen. That's the answer. The ego doesn't want to hear. If there's no source, then it's not real. It didn't really happen. So stop questioning and saying, well, why did this happen? Because the question implies that it happened, doesn't it? So that's the cunning of the ego. We keep asking, why did this happen? And you keep reinforcing through the question that you believe it did happen, which is why you keep having to ask the question.
Well, I suppose the question is, why the heck am I doing it? Why the heck is it so hard to beat the ego? I know
your mind has got attached to
it. Yeah.
You've identified with it, and you think, you think that's yourself. So you think it's you. You think it gives you identity. It's your source. It's salvation. It's your guide. This is what we've done. We've given our minds to this false self-concept with no source in truth. And we try to make that work over and over and over again. Yet the answer lies in the experience. So you have that experience of the oneness, and the experience answers everything, doesn't it? Okay, I get it. In that experience, yeah, I understand. Everything's perfect. And in that experience, there's no ego. There was no ego in that experience. So it's possible. You've experienced a state where you were egoless for a while.
Yeah.
So it's showing you that it is possible. So why couldn't you have that state for all eternity? No, you could, if you choose to. This is what he's saying. You can, but you must choose it. And you must undo systematically and progressively, all the egoic thoughts and emotions, because those are what block that experience from coming into your mind. And so this is what he's saying, let these dreams fade. They'll be given to your true self to fade before its magnificence reveal your true self to you at last. So you give it to oneness. You say, okay, this isn't true. Whatever the dream is showing me, it's not true. I'm still one self. I'm still this single self. Nothing's really changed. And I can remind myself of that. And
so you say ego has no thought and it's just a dream. That's really a good one to go to sleep on tonight.
No, but that's we know that. That's what we've been studying. It has no source. If it had a
no, but I just think this is where it really tackles you inside. Well, the mind is,
Well, the ego doesn't want to accept it because you've just said to the ego you don't exist. And it'll go, no, I do. Oh, I absolutely do. And I'll show you I do, because I'll think all kinds of crazy thoughts. There, look, I can think that thought, I can think that. Oh, and there's another one, there's another one. And, off it goes. But none of those thoughts have a true source. So you need to start to become aware of where those thoughts come from. They're just like random, crazy, chaotic, coming from nothing. There's no source to them. Can you see that?
Why does thought arise then? If that is the case, why does it arise? Why
You just asked the same question.
What? And I didn't even notice.
You just asked the same question that Sally asked. Why did that happen? How did the impossible happen? Why did
you made
thoughts
me
arise?
read number 4. Read number 4.
Refer to CN4, right? Refer to. That's the answer. Because logically, your mind can't figure that out, you see. Because the part that's trying to figure it out is the ego. So of course the ego can't figure out why it doesn't exist. Because it's trying to figure it out from a perspective that it does exist. Do you see the conundrum that we're in? So you can't figure it out, as Einstein said. Significant problems we face, all the problems the ego's invented, cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. Okay, great quote. Like you can't solve the problem within the ego's framework. It's not possible. You'll just keep hitting the wall. Well, why did this happen? How did the impossible happen? You keep asking the same question. And the ego, there's no answer to that question, as you said. Logically, within the ego's framework, there's no satisfactory answer. The answer is in an experience. I can experience a state where I experience that this isn't there. There is no ego. There is no separation. I can experience that right now. Now's the only time I can experience it. So that universal experience he's pointing us to will answer that question ultimately. So he's trying to take us out of our intellectual minds, because you're going, that's not going to give you the answer. The intellect can't answer this. And ultimately break your intellect. So you go, okay, I surrender. I just surrender to the experience. I'm not trying to figure it out anymore. I'm not going to ask these questions. I'm just going to go to the experience. So when that question comes up, why? Go, no, just go to the experience of peace. There's a transcendent peace. Go into the oneness, and there's your answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just had to go at 2:00, so I think that's a real good yeah.
Good one to end it on.
Yes. I have just written ego has no thought, it's a dream. There is no ego, as there is no separation. So I think
it has no source. I think that's quite a helpful idea. It has no source. So those thoughts that you have that are egoic actually have no source. When you realize that, they must disappear. The realization of that is their undoing, isn't it? That this has no source. Can't be real. Poof, pop, and it's a little bubble. I look at these things as little thought bubbles. And you blow those bubbles when you're a kid, and you blow those bubbles and they float around for a bit. And they
and again, what do you mean by source again? Sorry. If ego has no...
It has no source. Which is why it doesn't exist. There's no real source behind it. It's just crazy, scattered, insane thought. No true source behind it. Which is why you can let it go. If it had a true source, you could never free yourself from it. Just random, chaotic. Imagine a kid just blowing bubbles wildly, just like random thoughts, and they're just bubbling around, and they hitting walls and bashing into each other, and they're popping, but there's no substance there. And then sooner or later they're all gone, and it's just an empty space again. So think of it like that. You're just blowing bubbles continuously. The ego's blowing these bubbles, populating your mind with all these little entities. Eckhart Tolle calls thoughts little entities. It has a little a little existence for a while, seemingly, but it's false. It has no real source unless it's coming from the truth. So thoughts of truth and love and peace and joy, and these thoughts that he's giving us to study in the workbook, those are true thoughts. So those will stick. And you can kind of feel there's something there that's of substance. It's pointing you to something that is true, to pure formless awareness or perfect love, which is the foundation of your mind. It's a true awareness, without which you would have no existence. So those thoughts point you there. So those thoughts are real. They have a real source rooted in that awareness. But the other crazy thoughts, they have no source. They're just bubbling around, and we keep manufacturing them for no reason at all. Right? This is what he's saying. There's no reason for any of this. All of these crazy thoughts of the ego, there's absolutely no reason. There's no purpose, and there's no function. So don't give them a reason and a purpose and a meaning and a function, because they don't have one. And therein lies the forgiveness. Radical forgiveness just looks at all egoic thoughts and says, it's not true. These thoughts don't even exist because they have no source. And as soon as I'm aware of that, then I'm letting them go, aren't I? That realization helps you to let them go. And find the experience, rather. Okay, well, I can just rest in this deeper experience of this true awareness, which underlies all thought, which is beyond all thought. There's no need to think in the way we think of thought in pure formless awareness. It's not dualistic. I need to do that. I'm speaking to someone, I'm doing this. It's all subject-object, dualistic perception, isn't it? In pure formless awareness, there's no duality, so there's no need to think in those terms. So all thought, other than just the pure awareness of what we are, the closest we can ever get in thought is I am that I am. That thought is just a pointer to the Christ, which brings us into the experience of pure formless awareness of perfect love. So we're trying to use thought now to correct our minds, to bring us back to the experience of this. Okay, so that's what this operating system is about. I'm using my thought to think only thoughts that come from oneness. So I'm changing my perceptions, I'm thinking, but I'm transforming my thoughts. Now my thoughts start to have a real source, which is coming from this pure formless awareness of perfect love, via the Christ self, the one self, which then becomes the self that is able to interpret and have these perceptions and have these higher thoughts. So he's training us in thought, higher perception, which then connects us back with our pure formless awareness of perfect love. And he's not saying just do away with thoughts. So the Buddhist approach and many of the Eastern teachings, they go, do away with thought. You don't need to think. Okay, just try not thinking for a bit and see how that goes. And you'll probably last a few seconds, and then boom, in pops a thought. So Yeshua's saying, okay, well, let's try and direct your thoughts consciously. Let's direct your thoughts with the Christ behind them. You're making a decision to allow this Christ presence to come in, to allow the Holy Spirit to guide your thoughts and deliver you back to the experience of pure formless awareness of perfect love. And that's the quickest way, because you've got to deal with perception here. You're not just going to be able to let go of perception and thinking that easily. So it's kind of a different approach. He's given us this approach because he knows how thinking oriented we are in the West. And he knows that probably the Eastern approach of just blanking the mind and not thinking for hours on end. They do this, the Buddhism, they do Vipassana for hours, days, long retreats. And he's saying this isn't actually the quickest way. Quickest way is to do this transformation of your thought, which he calls the miracle, by applying his lessons and his teachings. And that's the quickest way to restore your mind to this awareness ultimately. And while you're doing it, you can actually be quite functional in this world, very effective, highly functional, working miracles can be quite a happy dream while you're learning this. So it's really a brilliant, you look at he's a brilliant teacher to have come up with a system like this to teach us, make it as easy as possible for us to get this. We're very lucky. We've got such a good teacher, and that we have this understanding. The Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity, has been around for thousands more years, but no one's ever understood it, so they can't really use it properly. Well, now we can actually understand it with the help of A Course in Miracles, and use it as the operating system it's designed to be, to restore us to knowledge of who we really are. Okay.
Thank you, and I am going to have to go.
Okay, Susie, thanks for joining. See you again soon, I hope.
Yes, you will. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Namaste. All right, so where are we? Number 4. The remembrance of perfect love.
The remembrance of perfect love reaches from the true self in you to all your dreams and bids them come to it to be translated into truth. It will exchange them for the final dream, which pure formless awareness of perfect love appointed as the end of the dreams, end of dreams. For when you have let go of the world and peace has come into every extension of perfect love, what could there be to keep things separate for what remains to perceive except your true self's identity? So when Susie was talking, what I was thinking was, every now and again, when I'm doing some deep work, I'll go back to a childhood memory that bothered me, that I had not been able to let go of. And so your analogy, it's just a bubble, you just got to pop it, it's not real, it's not true. And then I realized, well, actually, I'm feeding that thought, because whenever I get to some really deep work, I'll feel sad and I go, oh, it's that incident then. And I realized I'm actually choosing to have that there to keep me separate. And so I was just talking to myself and saying it's not true and choose to let it go. But yeah, I think the thing that struck me the most is I fed that thought. So every time I go through a certain thought pattern, I get to this sad feeling, I've got this loop in my brain that takes me on. I haven't got a brain, but this loop thinking takes me to, oh, sadness. Oh, it's when all my kittens were drowned when I was a young child. And it takes me through that thought pattern. So yeah, I think there needs to be, rather than waiting until I feel sad and it takes me down that route, to actually do some work when I'm feeling absolutely okay and keep bursting that bubble, taking the energy away from it, choosing not to have that as a real thing, as a real story, and completely let go of it. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a bubble. So that kitten idea, apparently it's an experience that happened apparently in your life, but there's no evidence of that. It's only a memory now. So it's a little thought bubble in your mind, and it doesn't serve you at all.
No, it doesn't.
So you just pop the bubble. You go, it never really happened.
Would it help to go back to that thought process and do the forgiveness on it? Would that make it disappear?
Well, this is forgiveness. To simply look at it and say it's not real, that's what radical forgiveness is. It never happened. You see, forgiveness is just saying it never happened. And so it's like an erase. You thought that was real, and now you've got this memory and it's clouding your awareness of who you are, but you just pop the bubble and you go, boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
It was never a real thought. And that never really happened.
So that is forgiveness, because I always felt that I kind of sit with something and forgive myself for it and forgive anyone in the situation for it, and then just know that it never happened.
So forgiveness means
really,
I let go of my own thought and emotion that is a block to the awareness of love's presence. It's been triggered by this situation. That's what it means.
Right.
It's really simple. I don't forgive anyone else. How do you forgive someone else? How's that possible, actually? All I can do is let go of my thoughts and emotion about that person, towards that person, that blocks my awareness of perfect love. That's what I can do. And then it becomes really simple. Okay, well, I have this block to the awareness of love in my mind. It's my responsibility. It's my perception. It's my thought. So, okay, I can let it go. I don't have to believe this. It's all unreal. Poof, pop, you drop it. You realize it was never true. And now you've forgiven them because there's no longer a negative thought and emotion. There's just that pure awareness. And now you perceive them differently. You go, well, actually, I'm not perceiving you from within the thought bubble that was distorted. I'm now perceiving you from the state of pure awareness. Okay, so you're okay. It's all right. Everything's fine. You are that awareness. I recognize that this awareness I have in me is the same awareness you have. I recognize the Christ in them. But I have to let go of these false thought bubbles in order to do that. Otherwise, I'm not in pure formless awareness, which is the foundation. I'm stuck in the bubble. And in the bubble, imagine you're now caught in the bubble. Your perception is wildly distorted. Because there's all kinds of reflections of light, and you're not seeing clearly, and you can't see the awareness. You're like in this little cage, and you can't see people correctly because it's your whole perception is distorted by the bubble. And that's what we do all the time. So the forgiveness just says, no, it never happened. It's just a memory, a thought bubble in your mind based on an unreal experience. The dream never happened. Your kitten's drowning in a dream never happened. So why are you now holding a memory of what never happened?
Yeah, it feels to me now that when I do go down that train of thought, I feel a lot clearer about it, and it'll be, caught you, there you go. So where are you taking me? No, that's not real. So it feels like the light is shone bright on that now. So that's cool.
So the light is just the true awareness. No, that's not real. I'm not going to get sucked down that rabbit hole into the thought bubble. I'm not going to allow that. I'm just going to, as soon as I'm tempted, I just go, no, it's not real. Poof, pop. You really get it. It's not real. How can I believe that thought if it's not real? I can't. It must disappear. So this is how you do radical forgiveness in any situation, any experience. You just say it's not real. It's so simple, and yet it's elusive, isn't it? It's difficult.
Because it's like you're letting go of yourself. You're letting go of your concept of yourself.
Yeah, your self-concept and those thought bubbles are one. So you, as believing you were Sally and a little girl, and that you actually have a human life, and that's just your story, and the interpretation of the kitten story are one. It's the self-concept, the false self-concept, interpreting it for you, making itself real by dwelling on that situation. Do you see how it works? And that's why it's difficult, because you're collapsing the self-concept that's invented the thought bubbles that really just distort pure formless awareness. They cover it over. So go back to our diagram. The alternate to this is a separate self sitting off here in nowhere land. It's nothing. It's nowhere. It doesn't even exist. But in your mind, you've given it a place, and now that's interpreting all of your experiences. And it's a parallel reality. It's giving you a totally different version of reality. It has no fundamental source, but the mind being what it is, if you want to believe in that, you just keep on in it. From the false self, you then perceive incorrectly. That creates more of those kinds of experiences, and you just loop around. You get stuck in that. And you're just saying, look, the only way out, you've got to re-venue yourself. You've got to take yourself out of this venue, which is insane, and you've got to put yourself in here. And the way to do that is to simply say, none of this is true. None of what I'm perceiving is true. Actually, the only truth is that there's one self. So any separation requires more than one self, doesn't it? The dramas in our lives, it requires more than one self to be acting in the drama. But if there's only one self, then the drama is meaningless. And so you just, by bringing it to this higher truth, you reinterpret all of this, and you just, zhup, you revenue yourself from this false reality into a true one. And you can do that just with your thought, just by thinking differently about it. That's what he's training us to do. And now you can connect. Having done that, you can now feel this awareness arising, and you feel the deeper presence and the peace starting to come. So now you're communicating with your Father or your source. Whereas before, there was no source. So you're trying to find something here, but there's only the illusion that you've invented. That's all. There's nothing beyond it, because it has no source. It has no depth because of that, which is why it's so unfulfilling.
Wow.
You just get caught up in the dream, going round and around, and you go, but where's it going? There's no source here. I'm going nowhere. I'm just spinning around in the dream. I'm like a hamster on a hamster wheel, just going, round and around. It's going nowhere. There's no point to it, because it doesn't have the dimension of depth that the true source gives, and we all yearn for that. So we have to revenue ourselves by letting go, forgiving, and bringing ourselves across from this nowhere land, no man's land, nowhere world, illusion, dream, into the real world. What he calls the real world is the world reinterpreted from the true self with the Holy Spirit. And now we have now we're coming back to reality, because we're perceiving correctly, at least. And that starts to connect us with our source, so we don't feel disconnected anymore. We feel like, well, actually there is something real, and it's arising more and more in my mind, and I can then have a happy dream. I know it's ultimately not real, but while I'm here, I can be pretty happy and contented, because my happiness and contentment come from here.
That was a bit of a wow. Something dropped in there. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting. So the more you work with this stuff, you see, it's like, oh, you just get another insight on it. You get another perspective on it. As Eckhart Tolle was saying, well, it's really simple. It's such a simple truth, but I'm going to talk about it for 2 hours. We can talk, because it's subtleties and the nuances of understanding, what's really going on in your mind and how the ego works. And then all these tools, the diagrams and the teachings, these lessons and the inserts, it's all there to just give you, it's like another angle on it, and something cracks open. Okay, I just got something that I wouldn't have got. So it's like, we're like Sherlock Holmes. If you think of that persistent, like I'm just looking for the truth. We're going through all of these words and all of it, and then bing, we hit something, we get a clue. And then there's an insight. Downloads, and we go, okay, so I got something, and of course the more you have those, the more the whole picture starts to become clear, and you don't lose that. So remember this. Okay, that's just a little thought bubble. Just prick it. I have a little visual. Just imagine you taking a pin and you just go pop, and you just pop it, and it disappears. It's like, boom. Okay, well that's gone, and that's gone, and you can do that with all your memories. Pop, that well, that's not true, and that's not true, and that's not true, and you just pop it. And in that popping, you will find there's a restoration to the underlying awareness, because that's all that's left. There's nothing to cover it over. That's all that remains. And you realize, why do I want these memories when I could just have this awareness? Perfect, whole, complete, right now, totally present. I'm not going into the past or future. It's right here now. I can have this beautiful awareness, and that can always be with me. Why would I want to go into memory or anticipation of the future when I can have this awareness? Why would you? There's no good reason. Absolutely no reason.
Just habit.
Yeah, just a bad habit. That's all the ego is. Bad habit, bad thought patterns repeated over and over. And now we just got to untrain them, undo them. Okay.
On that note, I'm going to go. thank you very much. Over to you, Sue.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll listen to the recording
Thanks.
later.
I'll speak to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So any thoughts on did we read number 4? I think we did. Exchange them for the final dream, which pure formless awareness, perfect love, pointed as the end of dreams. So he's just pointing us to this final dream is our final lifetime, where we just surrendering everything, we're letting it all go.
Yeah.
More and
Yeah.
more this pure formless awareness arises.
Okay.
And we do realize this is the end game. So this is the end of the dream forever.
It actually is comforting in itself.
Wow. It's the end of all pain, all suffering. This is it. Game over. The last time I need to do this.
Feel like I've done it to death.
Yeah. Well, we literally do it to death.
Yeah.
Over and over we do it and we die, and then okay, well, we can't really kill ourselves, so we come back and recycle again into another body and do it again. And it's like, what? Yes, just going, what are you doing? This is insane. Why do you keep doing this?
It does make me wonder why it's like I've chosen, or we've chosen this lifetime to now finally make the decision to let it all go. Yeah, it makes me wonder there.
Well, at some point you're going to do it. So
Yeah.
not now, then when? And we live in a time, look at the evolution of this. We now live in a time where this is accessible, it's available very easily. In times gone past, you couldn't get this information. This was mystic, hidden information. It wasn't written down. People got burned, for having these kinds of ideas. They got burned at the stake, crucified. And so, we now live in a time where we can actually study this freely without, fearing for our lives. We've been given all the tools to do that. We've got all this amazing technology that allows us to really study this in a deep way. It wasn't possible in times gone by. So it's almost like he's waited. Yeshua's waited for 2,000 years. It's okay, you're ready now. I've waited. I'm gonna give my book. Why didn't he write his book 1,000 years ago in the Dark Ages? Because it wasn't the right time. It wasn't. He had to wait until the time is right, and the collective consciousness of humanity has evolved to a point where it's like, okay, this can now come in, and it has a place. It can flourish and it can grow. It couldn't have happened in the Middle Ages.
No, it is more acceptable now, isn't it?
So people still think you're a bit weird, but no one's going to burn you at the stake, fortunately. So you can practice this freely, and there's people waking up all over the world, so that now we can form these conscious communities and connect with each other using this technology, and that all facilitates this awakening. So there's never been a better time, in my view, in human history to awaken than now. You've got all the help, all the support, all the tools that you need. So go for it. Well, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
There's no excuse, not to do it. We have this amazing teaching, and it's free. I mean, incredible.
Yes.
It's available freely on the internet. You just go and you just find it. And these words of ancient wisdom are just there, and you can read them anytime for free. I mean, that's just extraordinary. Okay, the interpretation, you might not understand them to start with, but then, okay, then the Spirit guides someone like me to do what I've done, to create a program that helps people with that. That's how it works.
Yes, there are amazing teachers out there, aren't there?
Oh, so
You include.
there's all this help and support and guidance. So why not use it? I'm just like, well, go for it. Don't wait for another life. Do it in this one. Just go for it and get the job done.
Yeah, good.
Really commit and give your whole heart to it, and that is paradoxically that's the best way of living your life in this world, because you can actually experience a happy dream if you do that. The
Yeah, it does.
is an unhappy dream. Well, what's the point of that? Okay, last paragraph. And how long?
And how long will you perceive this innocent identity when it is only the symbol that the time for learning is now over and the goal of the atonement has been reached at last. So therefore, let us seek to find your true self's identity and perceive nothing else. As we behold his magnificence, we know we have no need of learning, perception, time, or anything except holy innocent self, whom pure formless awareness of perfect love extends as its extension.
So he's saying, he's pointing us to the ultimate, the end game, isn't it? We have no need of learning. You go beyond learning, perception, time, or anything except this one self. In pure formless awareness of perfect love extends as its extension. So at the highest level, you simply realize I am the extension of this. I am that I am. I am this presence. I am this loving awareness. There is no other awareness. That's it. I am that I am. In the name of God.
Yeah. And it feels like it's saying, yeah, do it now, which is what we were just saying. Why not do it now?
Yeah, because there is only now. That's the whole point. It's only ever now. You're not going to find it in the past or the future. Those are inventions of the mind. It's only ever now in your present awareness. So you start to see how it all comes together. The teachings of the now and this Holy Trinity, and you go, wow, so that all makes sense. It's a cohesive, coherent thought system that I can see will work to deliver me to this ultimate experience of pure formless awareness.
It is good to have this explanation because it does, it just makes it all fall into place. It gives you that understanding, that overall understanding. Yeah, that it is really helpful to put where, because I know I've been, it always feels to me like, oh, I've been looking for my true self. I never really understood what my true self was. Now I have an understanding of where it is within the whole frame of things. So yeah, that's great.
Good. Yeah, well, that's why we have these. That's why the Holy Trinity exists, and why you have these explanations, because he's trying to help you to understand the operating system for getting you home. That's pretty useful.
Yeah.
While you're here, you need to know how to operate this. And the deeper you understand it, the more you can operate this by default. Ultimately, mastery is you operate this Holy Trinity by default. That's your operating system. You've uninstalled the ego's operating system, and you've installed this one, and the ego's completely undone and overwritten. And this now becomes how you function. And that's what we're doing with the mind training. It's a profound change of your fundamental operating system in life, which will deliver you back to this experience ultimately. But he's saying, don't worry about this. This will come in its time. It may seem, totally mystic and out there and unattainable, but it's just because you've still got some blocks to undo. So, use the operating system to undo the blocks, and this awareness will arise naturally more and more. It says, I can't teach you this. I'm not even going to try and teach you this. This will arise when you're ready. But I can teach you.
Absolutely.
The blocks to the awareness of love's presence. So I can teach you how to perceive correctly, how to perceive all your experiences correctly from a perspective of the true self, and in the process, let go of the alternate self and reality that you've invented.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
It feels like that's what the journey is. The journey is, ultimately to get to source, feeling that true perfect awareness, but it's the true self, which is where I feel like I'm drawn to get that sense of peace and love, and be in that state within me. And then I just know that's the rest is there, just for me to step into when I'm ready, or just whenever it happens. So
he's very comforting. He said, don't worry about this. The course, this is beyond the curriculum, it's beyond the scope of the curriculum, because God will take the final step. So just do this. Just do what he suggests. and get good at operating the system and changing your perception continuously, and this will take care of itself. The pure formless awareness of perfect love will arise more and more. You might have mystic experiences, or you may not. Who knows? But more and more of this awareness will be arising in your mind, and that's ultimately the source of your happiness and your peace and your joy and whatever you're experiencing here, that now comes in and changes your perception of the situations. So it all is actually in one line. It's all coming from this, but it's just filtered through the construct of the true self, or the Christ, and then your perception of the world, to allow you to function in this world. Otherwise you couldn't function.
And it feels like getting there will be the best experience you can have while we're in this dream. So yeah.
It's a happy dream. You're saying this is the best you can do. You understand it's not reality, but at least you're waking up to reality through your dream. You're not, fast asleep and just suffering. You're awakening. So it has a purpose. Dream then has the purpose of delivering you from the illusion of your false self to the true self. And that's great. My life has the only purpose it has, of awakening. And if I accept this, then your life can be pretty fulfilling, because it's going to take you back to the ultimate truth, back to source. And that's a life well lived if you do that. The ego offers nothing because it has no source. So where's it taking you? It's not taking you anywhere. It's just keeping you running around in this confused state, believing in a false self, and there's no destination. So its only purpose is to keep you stuck in that really destructive loop, feedback loop, self-perpetuating feedback loop reality that denies all of this, and tries to convince you that you are a separate self, and all of these thoughts and emotions that it sponsors are real, and your life is terrible. It's a miserable, what a miserable existence. Okay, so have we read number 5? Did you read number 5? How long will you perceive this innocent identity? I don't think you did, so have a go at that.
All right. And how long will you perceive this innocent identity, when it's only the symbol that the time for learning is now over and the goal of atonement has been reached at last? I think I read this. So therefore, let us seek to find your true self's identity and perceive nothing else. As we behold his magnificence, we know we have no need of learning, perception, time, or anything else except the holy innocent self, whom pure formless awareness of perfect love extends as its extension. Yes. I had already read that, but yes.
Yeah, worth reading again. So this is what it's saying. Only this is real. Only this is true. Okay, so let's move on to the lesson then. I'm going to read the original and the translated version, and then paragraph 1.
Okay, the word of God is given me to speak. I express the message of perfect love. I like the alternative.
Yeah, I think the word of God is given me to speak.
I express the message
Can
of
be a
perfect.
bit kind of abstract. Word of God, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Word of God. People are like, I'm waiting for God's words. It's not really happening. You sort of start to think maybe we've got to be like Jesus and say all kinds of, profound things.
Yeah.
So I express the message of perfect love through my words and my actions. It's not just your words, it's your actions as well, loving kind actions.
I have actually, in my car, I've got a little message on my dashboard in big gold letters, and it says love in action. And that's just my reminder when I get in the car that to put love in everything that you do. So I resonate with that.
Yeah, exactly. Love's behind. And so as we do this, I express the message of perfect love, then I'm identifying myself as perfect love. The more I allow it to express through me or extend through me, the more I'm actually reinforcing my connection. It's the flow, it's the source. It's coming now from a source, flowing through you into the world. And that's why it's important that you actually express this. There's quite a lot of the teaching is saying, well, express it and extend it in your words and your actions, because that's how you will learn it. The more you do that, the more you reinforce the source in you. Well, it's coming from somewhere.
It's just being in that being in that love place. Yeah.
And then allowing it, don't get in the way and don't block it with your own thoughts and emotions. Just allow it to come through, extend through you. And that shows other people this love, and it confirms it in your own mind. The more you do it, the more you have, okay, well, there must be something there because I keep doing it. It's why, every teaching talks about being kind, being generous, being grateful, because it's the doing of it that you're reinforcing that it's there. Well, if I keep being kind, there must be a source of kindness in my mind. See? So I'm reinforcing it. Remember, affirmation, the most powerful form of affirmation is action, not words.
I think I've noticed that more and more often that feeling of love just comes up, and there's nothing that has triggered it. I just feel in that space of love, and it's not like I've thought the intention behind it. Where I think, oh, I could be in the love space in this space. It's not like that. It's just like it suddenly just is there, present of it, and it's just amazing to have that experience. Just appear.
An awareness, you see. That's where we've been taken. It's just an awareness. There's no sort of subject object thought. It just is. It's an awareness of itself. It's there, it's present. That's why we can call it presence. Presence, it's an awareness. These are all good pointers. I don't think God is a particularly good pointer because it's too conceptual in people's minds. It's like God, some kind of frame for God, and I have some kind of conceptual idea of what God is. Whereas an awareness, that word is difficult to misinterpret. It's just loving awareness. There's no form to that, you see. It's just a formless awareness. Is just formless. There's no like, there's God. Even the words like, it's like a block. Whereas awareness, like, oh, okay, well, that's much gentler. It's just this pure formless awareness.
It just is. And just when you're in that space, it's like, well, there's nothing bad happening in the world. Everything else is irrelevant. You're just that space is what's important, and what you're projecting, what you're feeling. You're just that presence is that matters at that time.
And that then changes your perception. So if you root it in this is being in the Christ self.
Yeah.
You're in the real world. Your perceptions change. You're like, nothing's a problem. Like I don't perceive anything wrong. I don't perceive anything bad, because there's just this loving awareness that's transmuting it all. That just nothing can really sustain within that loving awareness. So my perception is transformed, and whatever's seemingly happening, the chaos and the madness continues on the level of form, but it doesn't affect you because your loving awareness transcended it.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to train us to do. A lot of people think that this is about, oh, well, you can't fix all of this. How's anyone ever going to change all of this? But that's not the point. You're not trying to change things on the level of form. You're just trying to access your deeper awareness that is beyond it.
Yeah, it's funny because it's almost
ultimately disappear.
Yeah, it's like if you do the trying, you can't make it happen.
No.
It just happens. So yeah.
And it's your own experience.
Yeah.
In the end, it's what other people are perceiving is up to them. There's people who will continue to choose the ego because that's their choice. But you choose the spirit, and so you now live in the happy dream. You live in the real world. Everything's okay for you. And you try and bring your brothers in, because you try and say, well, this is amazing. We can all experience this. Just train your mind, just change your mind. That's all. It's actually very, very simple teaching. Think about it in these terms. But to practice it, that's the work, because you're going against the world's thinking completely. Okay, so you want to read number 1 there. What is the message of perfect love?
What is the message of perfect love? My extension is pure and wholly aware as myself. And so did pure formless awareness of perfect love become the source of the extension it loves. For so it extended. The message, its extension did not extend with it. Because in its, just covered up. In its extension was born. Let us accept its sourcehood, and all is given us. Deny we were extended in its love, and we deny ourselves. To be unsure of who we are, of who our source is, and for what purpose we have come. And yet we need only to acknowledge this loving awareness that gave its message to us in our extension to remember it, and so recall ourselves. Oh, so yeah, we will just be talking about the loving awareness. So that feels like the message.
Well, that's obviously
Giving out the message. Yeah.
If you read the original, you'll get lots of Father, Word, Him, His. It's
yeah.
very different feeling to it.
Okay. Well, sometimes I get a bit confused with all the it's though, because it's like what is the it referring to? So what is the message of perfect love? My extension is pure and wholly aware as myself. So do pure forms aware of perfect love become the source of the extension.
It loves.
So that's the source. Yeah, that it loves.
So it was extended.
Yeah.
So the it is referring to source normally, because normally the translation but if you get confused, just go to the original.
The original, yes.
As you refer to him or his, and that's usually referring to God, ultimate source. But sometimes it refers to, like, he capitalizes son. So the sun is also capitalized because it's extension. But then if he refers to the sun, he'll put a small h. So there's inconsistencies. Look, for the sun he loves, for thus was he created. Okay. So now you've got a small h, but you've got a capital there.
So he loves, God loves, for that. Thus the Son was.
Father, the Son he loves, for thus was he. The small h is the Son.
Yeah.
So I've translated that is for thus was it extended.
So that's yes, it was extended.
So it was extended. Right. That's what he created. So it was extended. You could actually make it even present tense. For so it is extended.
Yes, that feels better. Yeah.
For so it is extended. So the it then refers to the extension.
The extension, yes.
The source of the extension it loves, that it is the source. For so it is extended. The extension is extended. But if you're not clear, then you can always look at the translation. So part of the reason we've got the original and then the translation is that you can work through this yourself. And you can read the original and you go, okay, well, right, so I've read that. Maybe it doesn't make that much sense to me. Now let me read the translation. And in the translation, you're starting to unpick and understand the original. You go, oh, okay, so I see. And you notice I've coded it so that you've got all of the translated words in italics.
Yeah.
You can see what's been translated and what hasn't.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah.
So by doing this, it becomes your own study. You go, okay, well, let me study these two versions. And in the translation, you will learn more about, the lesson than if you just read the original, without a doubt. I've seen it over and over.
Yeah.
So read them, and I'm just reading the alternative to save time, because we end up running out of time if we read
Yeah.
original as well.
Yeah.
But you read, if you're doing it yourself, read this, pause a bit, go, okay, if I'm not sure about something or it's not quite sitting, read the alternative.
Yeah.
And usually the alternative will unveil it. It's like the revealing of a deeper part of, of what's actually in here. It's there, but it's just covered over by the language. So it's the same methodology we're using spiritually in the language. It's like just take away some of those terms, use other terms, reinterpret. That's the whole process of what we're doing anyway. And then the deeper meaning is revealed. And so the purist will say, well, you shouldn't change the course because it's kind of set in stone and was given by Jesus Christ himself. But he's saying, well, use whatever's helpful. He's not attached to the form of his words, I can tell you that. He understands they're just symbols twice removed from reality. So use whatever words are helpful. And maybe when he gave this, what was that, in the 60s and 70s, maybe this was the most helpful form at that time. For the people that he was giving it to, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to give it in this Christian terminology. So people have a reference point so they can then understand where it's coming from. Okay, yeah. God, Christ. So there was a reason for that. But we've now moved, we're now 60 years down the line, and there's this whole New Age movement, and people are now unfolding into a deeper understanding of all of these traditional terms. So wouldn't it make sense then that he would inspire someone like myself to go, okay, we'll do a translation there to make this more accessible to people, to make it more effective.
It definitely feels right. Definitely.
I think so. I mean, it's not just it's everyone who pretty much everyone who's done this course has gone, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's initially there's some resistance. So I'm not sure about this, but you start to study it, and then it's like, oh, okay, actually there is something here, and I can see why we do this, and the translation does reveal more to me. And okay, yeah, I get it, because I have a deeper experience, and that's the whole point. It's a universal experience that he's delivering you to. So if it does that for you, and if it doesn't, you might be one of the exceptions that likes the original, then read the original. It's fine. It's there for you. Ignore the translation if you feel like it doesn't work. It's just like a double whammy. You've kind of, in studying the course this way, you've got two versions of it studied side by side, and that's got to help your learning. And
I imagine if you're used to reading the Bible and you're used to that, then the original version will probably suit you. But that's a lot of people are less likely to be familiar with those terms. So
well, I mean, someone who's comfortable with the biblical terms will generally be a traditional Christian, and they will probably not necessarily be open to this version of Christianity. The people who are open to it are the ones who've usually rejected that traditional version and gone, no, that's not for me. Therefore, all the terms are not for me either. I don't want them.
That's exactly it.
So then speak to them in a language that's more accessible. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because I don't really have a problem with love. How can I have a problem with perfect love? But I do have a problem with God. But it's the same thing. God is love, and he says it in the Bible.
But that's a teaching in itself, isn't it?
Well, that's the point. So then you go, okay, so now I'm starting to understand these biblical terms much more, that they are pointers to a deeper aspect of our being, to an experience. And so in the translation, even if you prefer the original, you would probably learn something from the translation, because it gives you another perspective on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which I think is is valuable. So that's why, I mean, it takes time. Doing this isn't quick, but by the end of the work, we'll have a translated version of the whole course, which then is accessible to anyone. They can now hopefully, instead of reading the course and going, I just can't do it because of the language, they go, oh, actually I can do it because someone's translated it, and this is a language I can actually read and understand and accept. And then Yeshua's message becomes more accessible to hopefully a lot more people, which could only be what he would want. So, okay, so any thoughts on number 1? You only acknowledge this loving awareness. Don't actually have to think that much about these. It's more a feeling, isn't it? He's taking you into the feeling of it.
Yeah.
So they're very short. These are short sutras, just very short pointers. That's why very short paragraphs. To just point us into the experience, to direct us into an inner experience. And so the second half of the workbook is much shorter, you notice, just these short pointers. It's a two paragraph lesson with a prayer. There's always a prayer, which is then addressing this higher self in you, saying, okay, I'm actually going to start speaking to this, because that's going to activate it. If I speak to it, that awareness is being spoken to, that awareness is arising.
Yeah. So it's just talking about giving that message across, isn't it?
Okay, so number 2.
My source, your message is mine, and it is this that I choose to express to all my companions, who are given me to cherish as my own, as I am loved and blessed and awakened by you.
So I choose to express my source to all my companions, who are myself. I express this to them, and they are me.
Yeah. So you can express your love. It's actually you're expressing your love to yourself.
Yeah, I'm just loving myself. And of course, we feel that. When we do that, we feel expanded. We feel good. We feel happy, nice, calm, peaceful. Love is what we're all seeking for. But too often it's, I'm lacking love and I'm seeking love outside of me, the special love of the ego.
Yeah.
Rather than, no, I have the love inside of me and I just radiate that out. I express that out.
Yeah.
Inside out versus outside in. It's very, very different.
Yeah.
That outside in never works, because you're always coming from the place of being a lacking self, a deficient self who needs the love, and then you become needy. Now, I need your love. I need you to give me the love and attention I'm craving, as opposed to, no, I am the love. I am love. I have that source in me. And
that's all you need.
Oh.
When you get there, that's all you need. It's beautiful.
And so that's the holy relationship versus the special relationship right there.
So I guess you're having a holy relationship with yourself, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, with your source primarily. It starts with, this is my higher self. This is who I am. I'm rooted in my being. And now I extend that to all of my companions. And the relationship is then holy or whole, because it's coming from the whole. It's coming from source that is whole, from my true awareness. I'm not seeking satisfaction in the relationship. I already have it. I'm just extending it to them. Yes. So now I don't need you. I don't need you to do things and be some. I'm just extending it to you because I'm already whole and complete and perfect. And I'm just extending that to you. And I'm inviting you in to join me in this wonderful extension, in this feeling of, unconditional love. I'm inviting you in. If you choose not to come,
that's your choice. Choice. Absolutely.
But I'm still in it. And I just keep extending it and extending it. And that's the holy relationship.
That is lovely.
So simple. And yet.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the reading. Do you want to do a meditation on this lesson?
Have you got time for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm okay with it. Thank you.
All right. So just making yourself comfortable into a meditation posture. You can mute yourself, turn your video off if you want. So sitting comfortably, feet shoulder width apart, back straight, cup your hands in your lap, close your eyes. And start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. So breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. Subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Pausing at the top of the inhale, smile. Scan your mind, notice any thoughts, emotions, sensations going on, particularly anything that feels at all negative or limiting, contracted, constricting in any way, shape, or form. And bring it to the truth. So remind yourself of today's lesson. And I express the message of perfect love, which is in my heart. And so just extend that love right now to the person or people involved. There's usually personal people involved in any situation where there's difficulty. So just blow it all out, all of those difficulties like dark clouds leaving you. Going, gone. So you exhale, finally just pull the lower stomach into the spine, expel the last remaining air out. And just rest for a few moments in this deep peace and stillness. There's nowhere else to go, there's nothing else to do. Absolutely nothing else to think about, just be present, calm, be still, relax. Now just watch your breath. So breathing in through the nose, observe the subtle sensations of the breath in the nostrils, touch of the breath in the nose, and then when you exhale, let it out. And let's observe the subtle sensation of the breath flowing out. And then the cycle repeats, and you observe it flowing in and pause briefly and flowing out. And notice how peaceful it is when you just watch the breath. You're not trying to control it, manipulate it, judge it in any way. You're just observing this. Deep process called breath from your higher awareness, your true awareness. Able to just observe it without judgment. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. Just breathe, relax, be still. Observe your breath. It's Just watching the breath for a couple of minutes. To open your mind to the Spirit, which is pure formless awareness. Just spacious awareness, empty, open awareness. Spacious awareness of love's presence. And listen to these words in the spacious awareness that you've opened in your mind. Just keep breathing, watching the breath. Let these words drop into that empty, open, spacious awareness like pebbles into a pond on a very still, calm, windless day. And say to yourself, I express the message of perfect love. What is this message of perfect love? Asked Yeshua. The answer is my extension, as pure and wholly aware as myself. And so did pure formless awareness of perfect love become the source of extension it loves. The so is extended. Thus the message its extension did not extend with it. Because in this its extension was born. Let us accept its sourcehood in all is given us. So now we were extended in its love and we deny ourselves. To be unsure of who we are, of who our source is and for what purpose we have come. And yet we need only to acknowledge this loving awareness that gave its message to us in our extension, to remember it and so recall ourself. So just sink into that self. This is the Christ, the true self. That is aware of pure formless awareness, the perfect love, its source, and is also able to look at the world and just keep watching your breath, going deeper and deeper into this deep awareness with your breath. And say this prayer after me, just repeating in your mind these words to invite your source to come into your mind and bring you an experience, the universal experience that Yeshua talks about. So my source, take a deep breath in. Breathe it all in to every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being is infused. This golden light. My source, your message is in mind. given to me right now in this moment. And it is this that I choose to express to all my companions. Were given me to cherish as my own, as I am loved and blessed and awakened by you. And so surrender into this awakening. Feel this love in your heart. Feel it extending. And if there's anyone who holding any kind of grievance, any resentment, anger, minor frustration, irritation, whatever it is, just bring them to mind, hold them in your mind's eye. And just feel this coming into your mind, into your heart, and extending through you. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. Just breathe. Not really trying to breathe, it's just happening to you, through you, and for you. Just observe the breath happening in and out through your nostrils. Remain focused on that. You find a deeper awareness, this empty, open, spacious awareness will naturally arise in your mind, in your being. And just surrender to this awareness. There's nothing else to do. Nothing else you need to do. Just allow this loving awareness that you are blessed, you're loved, you're safe, to come into your heart and to extend to all of your companions. If any thoughts arise, seem to block this loving awareness, just observe them. Remind yourself that I am the pure formless awareness of perfect love. I'm the source, and I express the message of perfect love in this and every situation. Blow away the breeze of your breath, any dark clouds that are obscuring that message. Just allow it to come clear and bright back into your awareness. And let it all go and surrender for another couple of minutes of deep silence into this very deep state of connection with your source. Just you and it in unison as one loving awareness. Allow yourself to experience that. You are one with all your brothers in this awareness as well, your companions. So they're given you to cherish as your own, as you are loved and blessed and awakened by your source. And so just very gently coming back, maybe a little reluctantly, because this deep peace is so beautiful. And come back into an awareness of your body and the breath and the senses and the world. And on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises, subtle flow of air in through the nostrils, pausing at the top of the inhale, smile. Scan your mind, notice any thoughts, emotions, sensations going on, particularly anything that feels negative, limiting, contracted, constricting in any way, and just blow it away. The breeze of your breath, let it all go. The nothingness that it is, notice the air flowing out. Mouth, the chest and the stomach suck back in. Notice the weight of your body pressing down into the chair, your feet touching the ground. Notice what you feeling and touching. Notice whatever sensations are going on in the body, but from this very aware perspective. So there's no need to name or judge or label any of those sense perceptions. You just observe them in this very detached way. What you're feeling and touching, subtle smell in your nose, perhaps as you breathe in, the taste in your mouth. Notice what you're hearing without judgment. There's no interpretation. You notice these sense perceptions have no power to affect your state at all. So you're just going to stay rooted in this deeper awareness. The rest of the afternoon and evening, remind yourself about it frequently, using today's lesson. She recommends practicing it every hour for even a few seconds. Just bringing the idea to mind and taking a deep breath will do if you don't have more time. Otherwise, spend a bit longer and do a breath break to reconnect to top of your tank of presence. And so now on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. Just take a moment to look around, observing the various objects in the room from the same awareness, even though your eyes are open. The awareness is still there, very much there, present in your mind. So just be aware of that awareness. Look around to another object, notice it's the same awareness. If you're not interpreting that object, calling it by a separate name, it's just the same peaceful awareness. So you notice underlies all of your perceptions. You do that for half a dozen objects. Notice that there's really no shift, no change in your underlying awareness. And so you're training your mind that that awareness is the truth. And any apparent separation that you're perceiving is false. Training your mind to accept truth of its oneness beyond perception, beyond time, beyond the world. And so stay rooted in that awareness the rest of the afternoon and evening. Use today's lesson, giving instructions to do that in your text message or email under a minute, or listen to the 3-minute breath break recording and listen once more to a longer meditation this evening. There is actually a session this evening. We're going to do the text. It's section 2 of the Manual for Teachers, which is on who are the pupils of the teachers of God. Quite short, it's only 5 paragraphs. So join us at 6 o'clock if you'd like to. It's in 2.5 hours for that. Just doing it earlier so that people in South Africa can join because they're 2 hours ahead. So 6 p.m. UK time, that's 8 p.m. SA time. Join us then for a reading and discussion of that. Probably only be an hour or so. We'll maybe do a meditation as well. Otherwise, I will see you again soon, I hope soon. So thanks for joining, and namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much. Lovely session. Okay.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, bye now.
See you soon. Keep smiling.